This video is made for adult collectors because in the film this man literally decapitates someone and you see blood. It's kind of nuts. I have been waiting for this since 2018 when the Studio Series line started, and now that they said they wanted to branch into more characters that need more updates, I'm so glad this got one. The old toy was fine, but this just puts it in its place. This thing is stellar. It's so freaking good. It's big too, contending with a lot of old movie leaders for size, which is awesome to see in this modern budget. Like, here's 2009 Jetfire, Power the Prime's Optimus, who apparently is getting a reissue. I still don't get that. Grimlock from Studio Series, The Last Knight Prime, Megatron, and then The Fallen. He's big. I also want to say how awesome it is to have these three figure sets in relatively okay scale next to one another. If only Megatron had been made more recently to have slightly better articulation, paint, and engineering. Most of the paint budget went to the face on the Fallen, but it's an amazing looking face. The level of detail on display here is top notch and I love the blue. It's not as metallic as it was in the film, but it still looks very nice. Also, you can remove the face, so that's an immediate 10 out of 10. I love when the designers have fun with that. I love the color separation between the gray and the smoky clear plastic, but sometimes it can be too abrupt of like a stop in the separation, so you have bits of smoky black, then just gray. Now the clear stuff, let's talk about that. So he's about half regular plastic, half smoky clear black plastic. The reason is probably because this really does capture that smoky black color his armor had in the film. Like in person, it looks a lot better than those promo images and how some like white background photos make it look, because the light is just bouncing off that white and into the figure and it just doesn't look as nice. But some people have expressed their concern over it, rightfully so, because it's clear plastic, and in previous toy lines, clear plastic has been known to just shatter. Now, I have not heard of any breakages on this. It feels incredibly sturdy to me, so I have no fear in it. The plastic's not only layered in most areas, being like 2 or 3 pieces on top of each other to get strength, but it also has a pigment in it, which also can kind of help more with its stability. So I don't see any sort of issues coming in the near future of this guy breaking. I love how flat-footed the toy is. The Fallen has these wide-ass feet that keep him planted, and they also gave him heels, something the originals just for some reason don't have, so they want to fall over every 5 seconds. And also these feet aren't spring-loaded. No clue why the originals were spring-loaded. No. Never do spring-loaded feet. I thought we learned our lesson with first movie Megatron. I will say the orange application on my copy is a bit messy. Kind of wish it had an extra coat on it because it's not the greatest looking in my opinion. And I also wish it had a little bit more on the figure, but again, the face took most of the paint. He has gorilla arms, but they can be used as regular arms. He has all the joints to make them regular, but this is one of the very few instances where I actually think the gorilla arms works more, because in the film, he had gorilla arms. A lot of times you see him standing there with his arms like that, and it just kind of completes the look of the Fallen, but you have the option to not do it if you want to. The arm thingies, while they are miles better than the original toys version, they could have still been done a bit better. So they shift up and down on one axis, up and down, that's it. If they were made so that there was a series of double hinges that I'll point out a little bit later, it would have been a lot easier to manipulate them, but right now, they are posable to a point. After a while, they just kind of stop being useful and you have to unclip them, but you can swing them around to meet the arms, so almost every pose doesn't look that bad and you can't see the exposed ball joint. I will say Bolt Matrix got his without a cockpit, which is a shame, but when we were talking about the Fallen, he sent me a picture of him saying I made do and it was just a gummy bear in the cockpit, and that made me laugh. His articulation though is top friggin' notch for how wacky and kind of dumb his design is. He can do all the famous Fallen poses from the film, so I'm just going to show you what that looks like. My mom made the comparison that he looks like Makuta. Anyways, articulation. He has quite a bit. There's a lot that it does. I've already explained kind of how the arm things work, but I'll go over it just a little bit more, like in a little bit more detail here. But the head is on a weird ball joint setup, so he can look left and right pretty much as you'd want it to, and then he looks up that far and down that far. However, if you want him to look up more, you can literally just take the face off and then like position it up to get him to look higher. And you can lose his face. He does have an opening and closing jaw. Let me actually get his face. That I wish it tabbed in better. It's kind of just loosely sitting on there. Now the arms. The arms have a joint here and a joint here for transformation, but I like using that a lot. That and it doesn't tab in very well anyways, so it actually makes the arms kind of move up a little bit nicer to me. But you have that joint and then you have this joint. You have a bicep swivel that on mine is incredibly tight. So you got that. You got double jointed elbows. You have wrist rotation and a wrist hinge. Now, these armature things, they're a valiant attempt that still doesn't really work. They shift, right? But as I said, if they put a series like a hinge to hinge that connects to a hinge here, that connects to a hinge here, you would have been able to move this out more. Maybe give this ball joint a bit more range because there's no cut at the top, and you would have been able to get them to do more than just this. Because that's pretty much all they do. You can detach it from the ball joint, right? It comes off very easily because it's supposed to. And then you can position the arm literally however you want, like this. And then you can just sort of move it up to make it look like it's connected. And then it looks like it's connected. So you can fake it. And they said that on stream too when they announced this thing. They're like, you can fake it if you need to get it to go even further. So it's intentional. And while I like that, I still kind of wish it had better hinge, like a better hinge design back here. Also, this ball joint connector, you can barely see that, is on like a little shifty thing so it can move around as well. Let's connect that back up. Oh, I will say mine likes to pop off right here. I've only seen this on my copy though, so it's probably just a me thing, but yeah. He has nothing at the waist. There's no waist joint just due to the way this transforms. But like, I'm not that upset by it. Like, I'm not upset that this guy doesn't have a waist joint because it doesn't really make much sense for the big bulk like this. And same for this guy. He looks nimble, but in the film, he moves like a big bulky dude because he's huge. So a waist joint just doesn't really make much sense to me, so I'm not mad without it there. You got forward and back at the hip. Well, I mean, his hips can go literally wherever you want them to. They can go out. You have a thigh swivel and then a knee swivel. 90 degrees of bend at the knee. I kind of wish there was a bend here. I do really wish there was a bend there, but it does swivel there for transformation. So you got that, and then you got feet that go forward and they can go back. You got toe joints and you have ankle tilt. So he's extremely posable even though he's missing a waist joint, and those arm things can get annoying, but they can get out of the way. I really, really like that. I think he's definitely a contender for my favorite Studio Series toy, like ever. Transformation, if you can really call it that, is all right. It's basically the old toys transformation, just with some extra steps in the tendril things, which I find it's just easier to remove them, but I'm not going to for this. And while I'm not worried about the clear plastic on the toy, the clear tabs do worry me. Getting the left leg tabbed in on mine, it just isn't possible. The tab refuses to stay in place, but the tendrils do hold it in place just fine, so it doesn't really matter. Alt mode, yeah, it's just a flying crab thing. It looks neat, it looks very alien, but it's not much, really. I guess it works in the sense that this idiot was one of the first Transformers ever made in the movie lore, so he wouldn't really need to turn in anything that resembles a jet. He just is a jet from their planet, like Megatron was from the first movie. While the steps to conversion are largely the same between the two molds, the jet mode ends up being wildly different from one another, and I do like that. I like how they were able to separate the two while sharing engineering, but at the end of the day, for both alt modes, an attempt was made, but they still kind of look like shit. If you remove the tendrils, you just get the old jet again, which to me looks better. I like it a lot more without those giant arches, but then it requires parts forming, so it's up to you really if you want to do that. It does have a stand port, but no landing gear like the original, which is a bit of a bummer. It just kind of sits on the bottom on like a shelf or table instead of being on some nice propped up landing gear. It's an alright alt mode. I've never been the biggest fan of it, so he just kind of stays in robot mode for me, which is perfect. Like, I highly, highly, highly recommend one of these. It's such a great looking toy, like, bruh. I mean, I know a conclusion and an outro for something like this is supposed to be a collection of thoughts and concluding your main opening statement, but I'm here just to say get one. just go buy a Fallen. It's $55 for something that really should be more than $55. Yes, I highly recommend picking this up. But that's been my look at Transformers Studio Series Leader Class The Fallen. I can't believe I'm saying that. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.